Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Patterson, and I am the director of the Thousand Oaks Library. Thank you. And have the distinct pleasure of welcoming you to this special event, an afternoon with Kareem Rosser, author of Crossing the Line, a fearless team of brothers and the sport that changed their lives forever. Incidentally, today kicks off National Library Week, which is a time to celebrate our nation's libraries, library workers' contributions, and promote library use and support. The theme of National Library Week 2022 is Connect with Your Library. During the pandemic, library staff continued to exceed community demand and adapt resources and services to meet users' needs during these challenging times. Whether people visit in person or virtually, libraries offer endless opportunities to transform lives through education and lifelong learning. We want to connect our community with programs and services, including today's special One City, One Book author event with Kareem Rosser. The hope and perseverance shared in his memoir has resonated with readers across the country and here in the Conejo Valley. And we are thrilled to welcome Kareem and host this special event in person. And thank you so much for attending and supporting your library. Additionally, this month, patrons who register for a new card inside the library will receive a free book bag and can spin the wheel to get a prize or a ticket for a chance to win a $50 gift card from Target or Amazon. Please help us spread the word throughout our community by telling your family and friends and sharing our social media posts, because I'm quite sure that all 300-400 of you have a library card. Thousand Oaks Library has been privileged to offer Thousand Oaks Reads as a citywide literary event, encouraging community members to read and discuss the same book. A celebration of the selected book includes discussion groups and special events inspired by the themes in the book. The goals are to celebrate reading and literature, engage a wide spectrum of the community in thoughtful exchange of ideas and perspectives, provide a multifaceted array of programs related to literature and the arts, and foster a sense of community. A driving notion of the program is, when we open a book together, we close it in greater harmony. Thousand Oaks Reads, One City, One Book is sponsored by the City of Thousand Oaks, the Friends of the Thousand Oaks Library, and is made possible by the efforts of many. At this time, we would like to thank all those who have made this event possible and express special appreciation to the following: City of Thousand Oaks Mayor and City Council members, City of Thousand Oaks Management, Cultural Arts and Theater staff, TOTV, Thousand Oaks Library staff, One City, One Book committee members, Friends of the Thousand Oaks Library, Thousand Oaks Acorn, California Lutheran University, Mary Olson and KCLU Radio, Ride On Therapeutic Horsemanship, Safe Passage Youth Foundation, To and Fro Car Service, Accommodating Ideas, Inc., Language Access Solutions. Would all those whom I've mentioned please stand so that we can acknowledge you? And let's give them all a big hand. All right, just a little housekeeping before we proceed. I'd like to ask if everyone in the audience would please take a moment to turn off or silence your cell phones or put them into airplane mode so that we can all enjoy the presentation. All right, I can't see you, but I'll trust that you did it. I would now like to introduce Mary Olson, General Manager of KCLU Radio. We thank Mary for her contributions to our community and appreciate her willingness to be our host and moderator for today's event. Mary will announce the rest of our program and will be introducing our author and special guest, Kareem Rosser. Thank you, and Mary, please take it away.
Well, let's hear it for Jennifer. Jennifer is new to our amazing community. We were chatting backstage. She's got the big job at the library. She moved here from North Carolina, and we had a very deep intellectual conversation about mayonnaise versus Miracle Whip. And all the people from the Midwest and the South right now, it's all about the Miracle Whip. Am I right? Okay, well, this is such a joy to be here today. I want to thank the City of Thousand Oaks, the Thousand Oaks Library, and especially the Friends of the Thousand Oaks Library who made this program possible today. Yay, they're great. We want to give you a big warm welcome here today, and also those that are joining us digitally via YouTube and TOTV, thank you so much for videotaping it and streaming it. Also, special thanks to Accommodating Ideas Incorporated Language Access Solutions for providing ASL translation for today's events. I have to say, this is a huge thrill for me. I love libraries. I've been a lifelong reader. I think we're so lucky in our community to have the Thousand Oaks Library, which I think is one of the best libraries ever. It's great. And the only thing better than the Thousand Oaks Library are the librarians who work in the Thousand Oaks Library. I love each and every one of them. They're great. And they're really, librarians are the coolest people ever. And speaking as a kid in the Midwest, there were some librarians that really helped shape and change my life. So hats off to the librarians and to the great volunteers, friends of the library, who make all this great stuff happen. So I feel so lucky to be here. So every year, the Thousand Oaks Library sponsors the citywide One City, One Book, TO Reads Book Club. The committee is comprised of Thousand Oaks Library staff and supporters, and what they do is they search for a book that meets very specific criteria. It should be of high literary quality. They look at reviews, analysis, commentary, and commendations from the publishing industry, from other librarians, from journalists and educators. They look for a universal theme that appeals to a wide range of readers so we can all enjoy it. It's got to be available in multiple formats, including paperback and audio. It should be a discussable book that makes you want to have wonderful conversations as you talk about it. It lends itself to creative public programming related to the book, and hopefully the author is available and willing to participate in an author event. This year's book is Crossing the Line, a fearless team of brothers and the sport that changed their lives forever by Kareem Rosser. When he was just 8 years old, Kareem Rosser began a journey that would take him, one of 6 children raised by a single mother, out of a community plagued by violence and crime to faraway places and extraordinary achievements. It started at a nonprofit organization in Philadelphia called Work to Ride, an organization that teaches low-income children to ride horses and play polo in exchange for their help with chores in the stable. By way of a polo scholarship, Rosser was able to attend Valley Forge Military Academy. In 2011, Kareem led Work to Ride, the first all-African-American team to win the National Interscholastic Polo Championship and was named the Polo Training Foundation's Polo Player of the Year. Later, he was accepted to Colorado State University, where he again led his collegiate club's team to the national title in 2015 and was named the U.S. Polo Associate's Intercollegiate Player of the Year. After graduation, he parlayed his CSU economics degree into a career as a financial analyst and continues to play polo. Invitations to compete in tournaments have taken him to Europe, Asia, Africa. He's been featured on 60 Minutes, ESPN, and other outlets. Rosser also serves as treasurer of Work to Ride, and since 2017 has helped raise more than $6 million to support at-risk youth. He is all about supporting the program that gave him such a great future. Additionally, he secured a partnership with Polo Ralph Lauren to support the Work to Ride Foundation with a grant that will directly fund collegiate scholarships for Work to Ride high school athletes, shoes he once filled himself. In February 2021, Kareem released his memoir, Crossing the Line. It's a story of the bonds of brotherhood, family, loyalty, the transformative connection between man and horse, and forging a better future that comes from overcoming adversity. The book was a winner of the 2022 Alex Award from the American Library Association, which honors books written for adults that have special appeal to young readers. I had a privilege of meeting Kareem in the green room and chatting with him, and I am so excited for all of you to meet him and the time we're going to spend together. He is so impressive, and he is as warm and kind and wonderful as you imagine him to be. He's all that and some. Kareem has brought a video that he wants to show now, so we're going to look at a video really quickly, and then I'll introduce Kareem and bring him to the stage.
By poverty and violence in one of the most challenging neighborhoods in America and rose to unprecedented heights. His memoir, Crossing the Line, at times reads like it's almost too hard to believe, and sometimes you have to put it down because the details are so difficult. But stick with it, and you'll find what may be the perfect version of the American dream come true. Why polo?
Wow, that's a good question. Why polo? I don't know. Polo chose me.
Kareem Rosser knows he doesn't look like what most people think of when they consider the ultimate sport of the elite. He wasn't raised rich or with almost any opportunities, except one.
You know, the only place I ever felt free was when I came to the stables.
His story, Crossing the Line, starts in West Philadelphia, a neighborhood where violence and addiction surrounded him, including at home. The way you talk about your mom in this book is unvarnished. I mean, you don't leave much out.
Yeah, no, it was important for me to talk about our struggles, but also her struggles as a young mom. You know, my mom had her first child when she was 14.
With little supervision, Rosser and his 5 siblings often missed school. One day, his older brothers, David and Jabbar, wound up in a park nearby and found this, a barn full of horses and a woman named Leslie Heiner. Is this a therapy program or a sports program?
It's a little bit of both. The style you want on her?
For nearly 3 decades, Heiner has been running Work to Ride, which gives kids like Rosser a chance.
Kareem Rosser, looking on the near side for that ball.
It's a team sport, and they can pretty much, when they take the reins and they go, all of that teenage energy just kind of goes with them, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And the kids agree to stay in school and help at the stables. In return, they get to learn the sport of kings.
You want to try and match kids to the horses, you know, with their personalities, and horses all have personalities.
He must be being good because I'm here.
Nah, he was okay yesterday.
And then what I try to do is to, you know, have the kids, you know, have a certain connection with a certain horse, and a lot of times that progresses.
Kareem Rosser was hooked immediately, in part because he was paired with a horse that changed his life. So this is the famous Cholo.
This is the famous Cholo.
What was it about the two of you that made such a great match?
I think Cholo just understood me. I was always a very timid kid for a while, a very timid rider.
Spurred by the chance to ride, along with Heiner's instruction, Rosser began to excel in sports and academics. But he was still surrounded by heartbreak. His best friend and fellow rider, a girl named Mecca, was murdered along with her parents in 2003.
What struck me most was the fact that, you know, she was just a 14-year-old girl. And, you know, that could happen to me too, that I was not invincible. And, you know, that, you know, people who were out there murdering people weren't just murdering adults, they were also murdering kids.
I got her.
Hi, Tilly. Do good, babes.
Not long after that, Rosser's brother and polo partner at the time, Jabbar, left Work to Ride for good, pulled back into the bottom, the West Philly neighborhood that is so hard to escape. Kareem stuck it out and eventually got into the Valley Forge Military Academy, where he was pushed to new limits, and by a few kids who still didn't believe he belonged. He shares one of those stories in the book about a bigoted schoolmate. What did he say to you?
If I remember correctly, I was called the N-word and some other very terrible racial slurs. Eventually, I lost it. I told him to meet me in our dorm room, and
You shattered his nose.
Yeah, I shattered his nose, and he was probably one of the nicest kids at that school after that. And I'm not lying, and I'm not joking about that.
I believe you. I believe you. This is the neighborhood where you grew up?
Yeah, West Philly, where I spent majority of my childhood, where I would travel from, this neighborhood to the barn.
Rosser's drive on the polo field accelerated, and in 2011 came the big breakthrough. He became part of the first all-African-American squad to win the National Interscholastic Polo Championship. That was followed 4 years later by a college national championship at Colorado State University. Now a giant mural is dedicated to Rosser's accomplishments in his old neighborhood. Do you still come by and look at it?
All the time. I mean, anyone who comes to visit us from outside of Philly, this is one of our stops. We take everyone to go try a cheesesteak, and then we got to stop past the mural and show it off a little bit.
Today, Rosser has transitioned to the next phase of his life, working successfully as a financial analyst.
So come up here and then go outside.
Back at the stables, the unrelenting Leslie Heiner is still running Work to Ride,
Pay attention.
where her work is still needed in the worst ways.
I used to expect the children to come and bring a lunch. And then, after a couple of years, I realized that they don't have stuff to make lunch with. So that's like one of those big things that, the kids won't tell you that they don't have anything in the refrigerator. And so you have to provide that for them.
In the bottom, not much has changed. This past March, Kareem's brother David, the one who first found the stables, was also murdered. And you still think about him a lot?
Yeah, every day. I mean, it's hard not to think about him, especially, he was murdered just blocks away from where my mom lives. My family's still there. I still hear everything that goes on. I still get phone calls. Regardless of how far I try to distance myself from the bottom, it's always going to be a part of me.
If some little kid is out there watching, whether it's in the bottom or from somewhere else, and he feels trapped and he's watching, he's like, I don't know, polo though, what do you tell him?
Do whatever your freaking heart tells you to do, and one of the reasons why I wrote this book is it's bigger than me. I want to inspire kids who look just like me, come from where I come from, and knowing that they can go and dominate a sport that they don't think they belong in.
It's crazy to see that mural in West Philly. So Kareem doesn't get to play polo much anymore, ride much anymore, because he's so focused on his career as a financial analyst, but is heavily involved in a new fundraising effort for Work to Ride. As for Leslie Heiner, she says, she's been doing it for 26 years now. She says she's going to keep doing it until she's too tired. And I'll tell you, she is still on those kids big time, all the time. And it's serious. If you're not doing well in school, if you're straying off the path, you're not riding, and you're not doing that until you are performing well.
And it's all those programs, though, that really stress, you got to follow the rules.
You got to follow the rules. Do the work.
You're not going to get all of the perks
That
if you don't follow the rules.
his fighting spirit to keep surviving despite everything else by finding that one passion.
Yeah. Amazing.
Please give a very big, warm Conejo Valley welcome to Mr. Kareem Rosser.
Thank you.
You guys are going to make me cry. First, I just want to thank the Thousand Oaks community for selecting my book. I know this is huge in so many ways. For me personally, my family, just to get this sort of recognition, it truly means so much to me. but more importantly, really, my family and the Work to Ride program. You know, as we think about sharing our story and letting folks know who we are, and also the incredible work of Leslie Heiner. So I just want to thank everyone that was a part of selecting my book, who've shared my book, who've read it, you know, and who've nominated for awards. I just want to say thank you and a round of applause to everyone in the Thousand Oaks community. So I just kind of want to gauge the audience and see who's here. Kind of by show of hands, do I have any equestrians in the Okay. Okay. How many people watched a polo game here before? And I see some of my fellow polo members there, the Yurts family. They are incredible, and I just want to give you a round of applause because they've been a huge part of my journey. I've had the privilege of playing against their boys who, you know, annually would just kick my butt all the time, to be quite honest. But incredible family, incredible kids, and also incredible people to have in the polo community. So I'm glad you're able to make it. And lastly, how many people have been to Philadelphia? You know, I'm a proud Philadelphian. I love the city. You know, I know, you know, we're a city of many firsts. I think the first zoo, the first computer, hospital, lending library, also the home of the first all African American polo team to ever win a national championship. And then unfortunately, we're also the first, you know, we're the home of the city to the first man to slap someone on the Oscars too. So, but I won't claim that one. So I won't claim it. No, all jokes aside, I'm so happy. I'm so happy to be here. And you know, one of the things today I want to talk about, you know, the process of writing the book. You know, why I decided to write the book, and what that really meant to me. You know, back in 2018, a good friend of mine who's in the polo community, Nacho Figueres, many of you may know who he is. You know, he approached me and he asked me, he said, Kareem, you know, have you ever thought about writing your story, or writing a story and telling your story? And you know, I said, Nacho, no, I never thought about it. You know, to be quite honest, I never thought of myself as a writer, and you know, I never really thought about putting everything down on paper and into a book. You know, so Nacho and I went back and forth, and I was hesitant, and I didn't realize why I was hesitant and what I was scared of. But then I knew the next big thing was I had to go and approach my family. I had to go and talk to my mom about, you know, writing our story. And I knew that, you know, when I was going to write this story, that I was going to have to tell everything. You know, that I was going to have to talk about, you know, some of my mom's biggest demons. You know, I was going to have to talk about my brothers and their failures and their time in prison, and you know, and why they left the Work to Ride program. And I was also going to talk about some of my biggest insecurities, right? You know, I was going to have to show a vulnerable side of myself that I just was not sure that I was ready to do. And you know, after several conversations with my mom and going back and forth and you know, talking about, you know, what I'm going to write about and is she okay with this, and you know, and she immediately said, yes, go son, go write about it. You know, go share our story. Whenever I talk about my mom, I get emotional, and because she's an incredible person. And you know, thank you. And then I also had to talk to my oldest brothers. You know, at the time, my brother Jabbar just got out of prison, and you know, I went to visit him in prison a couple times. It was the first time I've ever went to, you know, visit anyone in prison. I was back from school, and I had time, and you know, we talked quite a bit, and we were always close. And you know, I had to, you know, Jabbar is also known as B, and you know, I was talking to B, and I said, B, I want to write this book, and you know, are you okay with it? And then also, you know, I never asked him why he left the program, why he decided to do some of the things that he did. And it was an opportunity for me to really sit down and talk to him about those things. Because in a weird way, we would kind of shy about the known, and we knew what was going on. We know, even though it was, he may have been making poor decisions, and I was off doing my thing, and but it was an incredible moment for me in my life, just kind of sitting down and understanding my brother's decision making, because I realized too that his decision making was also the same as some of the other kids that grew up in the community that we grew up in. So, we talked about it, and I talked with my mom, I talked with my siblings, and everyone gave me the green light. And I started writing. And through that process, I didn't realize how many things that I've done in my life. I didn't realize how bad we were truly struggling. I didn't realize all of the sacrifices that my mom would make for us. And through that process, and I'm 29 years old, and people often tell me, I lived an entire life already at 29 for some of the things that I've experienced, and through that process, I started putting things on paper, and I would often just start bawling. I would just start crying, and they were all happy tears. I was taken back by just my personal growth, my family's progress, where we grew up in the community, and because life just goes on and everything happens so fast, and you never get a chance to reflect. So I was thankful when I was encouraged by folks to go and write this book, because it allowed me to reflect on the progress that we made as a family. But it also allowed me to understand my mother a little bit more. I'm going to go in and talk a little bit about my family, and they're literally everything to me. Growing up in West Philly, we didn't have much, but we certainly had each other. And my mother made sure that we knew that. When there were nights where, we all slept on the floor, and, we used the oven to heat the house, or at least to heat that area. And, we would share jackets and share blankets. And my mother would, take a sheet and cover a portion of the house so that the draft wouldn't come in, so that we were warm. And, there's no way I don't think there's any way you can get closer to anyone when you're literally sharing a small space. And, I write, we're basically in a nest, and we're, using each other's body heat to keep each other warm, but also just providing that comfort. And we weren't the only families, the only family that was struggling like that. But, my mom said, if we don't have anything, that we have each other. And I have the best relationship with my family. I mean, we tell each other everything. I think we know every secret about each other. My mom was a young mom. She had my brother when she was 14 years old. And she had 6 kids before she was 30. And she's a single mom. And she raised all of us by herself. Fortunately, we had a big family. My grandmother was around. We had an open door policy in our house, so anyone could come and sleep over, and all cousins that would come in and out. But my mom just made sure that we were always together. And even though she was struggling with addiction at the time, and she was often high, her choice of drug was cocaine. And, I knew when my mom was high, or she was about to get high, she was just, she would open up a beer, and then, her demeanor would change, and then she was absent. And she was physically there, but she wasn't always present. And, through this process of writing, I didn't at the time understand why my mom got high and why my mom drank. I just knew that she did it. And there were times where I was okay with it because we didn't follow any rules. We got to do whatever we want. So, I mean, my mom was high. We were off, being bad kids. But she was struggling. She was truly just struggling with loss and, being in abusive relationships. There were men that were in and out of our house that she often had relationships with, and they were never pleasant. And we would see these guys come in and out, but we never really understood what was happening. But my mom was, she was there, trying to figure out how to take care of us and make sure that we were okay. And just having my siblings around and being with them and having their support. When we were struggling, we didn't really truly feel it because we had each other. So I think about my brother Jabbar, my brother David, my twin sister Kareem, my younger brother Damar, who we call Gerb, and then my little sister Washika. We had each other, and that's all we had. Then I think about the neighborhood that we grew up in. Like I said, every family struggled the same. It was, sometimes people didn't have hot water, some people didn't have heat, sometimes people didn't have food. But you would go over to your next door neighbor and borrow a tub of sugar or borrow some veggies for the night. But that's just how the community worked. Despite all of the violence and just the crime and things that were going on, there was still this sense of camaraderie there, and you can always kind of count on your neighbor. And you walk down the block in West Philly, there's litter everywhere. There are abandoned homes. There's sometimes family who are sleeping in abandoned homes because that's all that they have. You see the lack of resources, and everybody have the same struggle. And one of the things, I think about even today, and I kind of walk in the neighborhood and wondering, why all the mental health issues and why people are depressed and, why individuals are, not motivated to get a job and all these sort of things. And I realized too that, when you wake up every day and you think about just surviving, you don't have the ability to really think about college or anything else. You're getting up every day and you're trying to just make it through that day. And that becomes incredibly difficult for so many people, as they are just trying to get on with life and get on with their day. Fortunately, my brothers were often just riding up to no good and getting into trouble. My brother Jabbar and David were my mother's troubled children, if you will, especially David. They were out one afternoon riding their bikes in Fremont Park. So Fremont Park is one of the largest metropolitan parks in Philadelphia, and the land is not contiguous, but it's massive, over several thousand acres, and that's where the Work to Ride program is in the Shimoni stables there. And Leslie, started the program in '94. And fortunately, my brothers, were out riding their bikes and took a wrong turn, and it was the best wrong turn I think as anyone's ever taken in their life. So when I think about the neighborhood too, and getting out of the neighborhood and then figuring out waking up every day and not just thinking about surviving the day, my brothers found this organization, the Work to Ride program, and we stopped thinking about surviving. We were able to dream, right? Our dreams we knew that we could achieve our dreams by finding this organization. So, my brothers, they rode up there, and Jabbar, he was just full of energy, just kind of head first into anything. And he met Leslie, and I think the first day he met Leslie, And, he went to go pet a horse. And I know Richard, who's sitting here in the audience, is also a Work to Ride graduate. There was a horse named Devil. So just kind of think about that name. Let that sit around for a bit. My brother B, he goes up and he goes to pet this horse, Devil. And I wasn't there at the time, but this is a story. And Devil grabbed B by his face. Basically took a chunk out of his face, threw him. And this is my brother's first day at the stables. Like, this is their first interaction. And B comes home with this massive gauze patch on his face to my mom with his application in hand, saying, Mom, we found this incredible place. Can you please fill us out? We want to go. And he has this massive gauze patch on the side of his face, and this horse took a chunk out of his face. But, that's just a testament to who my brothers are and how tough they are. My mom, fortunately, didn't even blink an eye, didn't even think, and she signed the application, and my brother started the Work to Ride program, and she, met Leslie once, I think, at the time, and, people in her neighborhood were very cautious at first and was wondering, you're really gonna let this white lady take care of your kids? And my mom was like, yes. She was like, yes. And, Leslie, she's a saint. I mean, I can't describe her in any other way, but she's just a saint. She's an incredible human being. She's literally has given every piece of her life to this organization and to the kids in West Philly, or just in Philadelphia in general. She's just an incredible person. So the Work to Ride program, my brothers, after, B came back with the application, and then also my brother David was a terrible student, and he decided to take my kindergarten report card to try to get into the program, because that was like a whole nother thing. So part of the requirement to get into the program was you had to write a 300-word essay, you had to bring your report card, and then the application as well. And David was a terrible student, and clearly he was not using his brain, because I think he was probably like in 6th grade or 7th grade, and my report card said I was in kindergarten or something like that. So, and it would have been really bad, the classes that I was taking, he was taking at 7th grade, so he didn't think through that. But, Leslie said, any kid that would go through that effort and that process, she was willing to save them, right? And, and that's what the organization is all about, saving kids. So then I eventually, I joined my brothers. I always wanted to do everything that my older brothers did, and whatever they were into, I just wanted to follow them around. And, eventually, my mom threatened them and said, well, if you guys don't take your younger brother, you can't go to the stables. So I was happy about that, because she threatened him, and they finally let me go with him. And so I joined the Work to Ride program, and then I immediately realized that this is my out. This is my safe place. This is a place where I know no one's going to harm me. No one's going to harm my family. I just felt safe. And once I got to the barn, I never left. As Richard can tell you, I mean, he basically did everything that we did. And, we would show up every day. We would, find food from the house and pack bags and sleep in the hayloft and spend the night with the horses, just because it was our safe place. And the unfortunate part for most of us who were part of the program was, even though when we were safe there, we always had to go back home. And going back home sometimes was just terrible. It was just simply terrible. And, for a lot of us, we were comfortable sleeping in itchy hay, and, sometimes maybe, just finding a place where, we felt safe and comfortable. And, I think eventually Leslie caught on to that we were just hanging out and sleeping at the barn. And my mom, she actually, it never bothered her because she knew where we were. She was never concerned if we were, missing or anything. She knew we were at the barn. So, the program, again, it's just an incredible organization. And Leslie, I wish she was here today because, every time I talk about her, I tear up. There are a lot of special people in this world, but I've not found anyone as special as her. If we were able to clone people, I would clone her. But she's a force to be reckoned with, and I know Claudia and Mike have had the privilege of meeting her. I think Arsha is here as well, has the privilege of meeting her, and they all can talk about how incredible she is. And then once I got into the program and started riding, and I was a timid rider. I was scared of everything. And my first horse I got on, her name was Angel. Unfortunately, she was an angel. And having older brothers, they just terrorize you, right? You can't ever just do anything without your brothers bullying you or making any new experience painful. So my first time I got on a horse, it was with my brother David, and he's walking me around, and of course they want to slap the horse on the butt and make the horse run and make me fall off and all that good stuff. And so I was timid. I wanted to stick with Angel. I probably rode Angel for a good 4 or 5 months before I got on a full-size horse. And then, inevitably, I ended up on a full-size horse, and I started learning to ride. And every time I got on the horse, I just felt free. I was so happy, And you see every kid that walks into the stables and they touch the horses, and you get on top and you start riding. I'm sure everyone who has been on a horse, and some of the questions that are in the audience, can talk about just how free you feel, and once you connect with the animal and the peace of mind that you have when you're with a horse. So whenever we were at the barn, it was our happy place, and the horses, were our guardians. And then we started to learn to play polo. Again, me being a very timid person, it took me a long time to kind of, gain the courage to pick up a mallet and start riding and swinging. And then, I started playing, and I got good enough. But then we started to realize the doors that were opening up for us playing polo and the opportunities that were there. And then this sort of exposure that we started to get, and by traveling and meeting new folks. And I kind of want to tie this back and think about the community that I come from in West Philly, and how families and kids and people 40 plus and 50 years old never really traveled no more than kind of 3-4 miles away from their home. And because of polo, I've been fortunate enough to travel the world and meet incredible people and have doors open up for me that you can only ever dream of. I was fortunate enough to get an incredible high school education, to go to Valley Forge Military Academy, and then go on to Colorado State University, and to go on and travel the world and go to some cool places. And I was fortunate enough to go to China with Claudia and her son, and we competed on Team USA. And I think about the exposure there, and I have a funny story because I think we were at a market. We were somewhere where this older gentleman comes up to me, and he grabs my face, this older Chinese man, and then he takes his hand and he looks at his hand. So he rubs my face and he looks at his hand, and then he's trying to I think this is his first interaction with a black man. And he's laughing, he's really rubbing my face, and I'm like, what's going on here, And we all got the biggest kick out of it. But to be exposed to something like that, right, and to go to a different place like China, understand the culture, then I think about the folks back in West Philly who never travel, with like no more than 5 miles outside of their radius, and to kind of be stuck there and not, realize what's out there. I love talking about exposure and using that word exposure because I think that is so important. And I think about dreaming. You can't really dream or believe anything if you're not exposed to that. So, polo has just given me incredible exposure and has opened so many doors. Then I also think about, my mother's first time on a plane was about 6 years ago when she came to visit, when she came to my college graduation, and she brought her husband at the time. He came also with us, and the furthest he's ever been was, I think, to New Jersey, which is a mile across the bridge. So he gets on a plane for the first time. He's 50 years old. He gets on a plane the first time. He flies. He lands in Colorado. I think Richard picked him up from the airport, actually. And I still think this is the funniest thing to me, but it's really not funny. This is the first time that my teammates and my friends and roommates are meeting my family in person at school. We're all getting ready to graduate. And I think we're at some like banquet hall getting ready to eat. And he goes up to my friends and he's like, I can't believe you guys have so many volcanoes here, right? This is in Colorado. And then everyone's really confused. Like, what is he talking about, volcanoes? There's no volcanoes here, right? He's looking, and he's like talking about the freaking snow caps on the mountains in the Rockies, right? And I was, we all just had to laugh. Like, that's all we could do was just laugh about this 50-year-old man who's never left Philadelphia, and he thinks the Rocky Mountains are volcanoes, And then, but those moments are cute and funny, and then you think about the fact that, this gentleman has lived in Philadelphia for 50 years. He got on a plane for the first time, and he hasn't been exposed to anything else. All he knows is Philadelphia, the violence, the crime, and just the poverty. And I just realized, I'm like, we have to do something about this. We can't continue to let someone go 50 years before the first time they get on the plane and think, that the Rockies are volcanoes. But it's incredible things like Work to Ride and the organization and the opportunities that it's given me and that it's given Richard and my family members. Lastly, really, it's kind of, and then I really want to answer all your questions because I think that's the fun part here. When I wrote the book, one of the things was, what did I want people to take away from the book? Because in the media, as you saw, there was always just this, we were these black kids from West Philly who came from this incredibly poor place, and we won a national championship. And and I'm like, it's kind of more than just that, And when I started putting this book together and writing, I wanted people to just truly learn how amazing Leslie is, truly understand what it means to come from poverty, but also, kind of believing in yourself and persevering and remaining resilient and just kind of getting back up. There's a lot of feel-good stories out there, and I was really just hoping that my story could help a few people. But I think, clearly all you are here today, and some of you may have read the book and some of you may have not, and I encourage you to read it and to also share it. But the story is bigger than myself. It's bigger than my family. I think it's bigger than Philadelphia. My goal here was to share this story with people, and hopefully they can just find a way to connect with those who are maybe less fortunate. But also, if you are in a position to ever give someone a chance, just give them a chance. And that's what Leslie did to me, or did for me. That's what Leslie did for Richard, did for my family. And I hope people just not only feel good, but figure out how to make a difference. You know, and I'm hoping that this book can make a difference. So I'm incredibly thankful for this opportunity to speak to you all, to have my book chosen this year. It means so much to me. It means so much to my family. And I'm now ready to answer all the cool questions. Thank you.
Are you going to show some pictures?
Oh, I forgot about
That's
that.
okay.
That's
The clip was
yeah.
right there. Did you want to do that?
That's fine. That's fine.
I'm his assistant.
Yeah,
Are
yeah,
you
yeah.
Sure?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good. Good. Thank you.
All right, great. Let's do it. Let's do it. I told you he was fantastic, right? Yeah? I'm going to give a quick apology to Kareem and to all of you. I was backstage, but we did not have a monitor speaker, so I couldn't hear everything you were saying. So I'm going to apologize in advance in case I ask a question you have already answered. You can just give me a look. Let me see you practice.
Got it.
Okay, I got it.
Got it.
That's
Let's go.
going to be it. All right, good. He's going to give me the look, or you guys can give me the look. Mary, come on. All right. I'm really excited to be here. I told you backstage, I had a fangirl moment. He walked in, I'm like, oh my gosh, can I hug you? And he's like, yes, you can. And I did. I loved your book so much, Kareem.
Thank you.
I loved
Thank you.
it. I loved it so much. It was so wonderful. So it's a memoir. But
Yes.
here's the thing. You're not old. You're not gray. But you wrote a memoir.
Yes.
Which I think is important because that right there tells the publishing world that young people have plenty of important things to write about. So
Yes.
I love that. But I'd like to know why you wrote it now. Because you're still, when you're my age, I look at you and I say this with respect, you're still a kid. You're young, right?
Yeah.
Why now?
Now, it's a great question. You know, I think, as I mentioned earlier, you know, people often say, you know, I lived a long life, but I'm only 29 years old. I think there was just so much to share now. You know, I didn't want to wait another 30 years to share, you know, things I think that are relevant today. Also, you know, just sharing my family's story, but Leslie's hard work, talking about, you know, the incredible organization that being Work to Ride. I think there was just so much people needed to know now. And I think I would have been doing a disservice to everyone else holding all of this back. And so, you know, when I was approached in 18 about doing this, again, my biggest hesitation was just really having my family bless the project. And they did, and, you know, and I think people have, I mean, the outreach and folks who have reached out to me and via social media or letters or phone calls, I honestly didn't think that I was going to get this sort of response, but it's been incredible because you know, part of the goal was to hopefully make a difference and touch a few people, and I think I did.
Definitely. This is a sweeping generalization, and as a journalist, I never want to do that, but I'm going to go out on a limb now and do it. Most people who major in finance and become financial analysts are probably not also great writers, okay? But you obviously are left-brained and right-brained. So can you tell us just a little bit about your writing process? Because that's pretty daunting. All of a sudden someone says, hey, Kareem, you want to write a book? And then you're sitting there, anyone who's ever tried to write anything, and there's the computer, and that's a lot to take in. How did you manage it?
Yeah, no, I still don't even consider myself a great writer. You know, it's, you know, it was, I didn't talk a bit about it, but, you know, when I entered into Valley Forge Military Academy, I was so far behind academically. I think I talk about it in the book where, you know, I could barely read, I could barely write, you know, still learning how to count. And, but, you know, just through, you know, incredible support and an incredible school and staff who kind of just helped me get on track there, you know, I eventually graduated, you know, top of the class and learned how to read and learn how to write a bit. But thinking about this process, you know, I had help in the sense that there was coaching going on. It wasn't just me kind of going out and putting this together, because to be very frank, I wouldn't even understand how to even structure all of it. But it was just long nights, really, just kind of putting, as I like to say, kind of putting my head under the towel and just start thinking about it and putting things on paper, and with a great editor and support, I was able to put together a great memoir.
I remember you had a wonderful English teacher at Valley Forge when after you had to read out loud in class, and it was hard for you.
Yeah.
A big shout out to all the teachers out there. We're a better nation for having you. Thank you. When she said, Kareem, why don't you stay every day after class and let me work with you? Have you spoken with her or contacted her? Does she know now about this book, the one who helped you learn to read?
It's really funny. She sent me a note about 2 weeks ago.
Nice. And it said?
And just, she said, I think it's something along the lines, I'm kind of paraphrasing, every teacher kind of has that one special student, and, I was that one special student. And, and she knew that I was going to go on and do incredible things. And so I actually I sent her a really nice note back with the book because she was and still was a huge part of my life and my journey that allowed me to kind of sit here on the stage with you today.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So when I was doing research for today, I saw repeatedly your book categorized as a sports memoir.
Yeah.
Which I disagree with. And I just want you to see if maybe I'm not entirely wrong, because polo was kind of the music playing in the background of the real story, I felt.
Yeah.
And it was the vehicle that enabled you to tell the real story.
Yes.
And for me, that real story is defying the odds, and it's about love, and it's about family, and it's about disenfranchisement, and it's the bond we can have with animals that we love so much. Most of all, if someone said, what is that book about? I would say hope. Mm-hmm. So do I have that wrong, or is this a sports memoir?
It's not a sports memoir. I think you're correct. Again, polo is a vehicle to so many other opportunities, as I talk about all the doors that opened for me. But yeah, it's a story it's about hope and persevering and being resilient. And this shows it has some grittiness to it as well. It's not just a sports story because I talk about polo, but really I talk about mental health and my mom struggled with addiction and how incredible horses are.
Right.
And education and how important that is. So you definitely have it right.
So when you were describing the neighborhood you grew up in Philadelphia as the bottom, you said, it's a place where you had a better chance of being incarcerated or getting shot than graduating from high school.
Yeah.
You wrote about your brother David, and you said his bravery was more of a curse. You were a really timid child, and you talk about that a lot in your book. And I was thinking about that. Did your timidity unwittingly help set you up for success because you were too afraid to kind of have a life on the streets like your older brothers did?
Yeah, definitely. I think about, all of my friends who's my age or was my age, and, I unfortunately can't even count on both hands and toes on how many friends I lost to violence, that I went to kindergarten with or in elementary school with, and how I could have been them. That could have been me, right? I could have been shot and killed because I wanted to go deal drugs and hang out in the corner. I think definitely being timid and afraid certainly saved my life. How were you perceived by your peers, though, at that time when you were a little kid and you didn't want to be out on the street? How did they perceive you? I mean, they really didn't. It didn't bother them, because I was just, there's a saying in Philly, and I think I write about it in a book. It's kind of, someone, when you greet someone and ask how you're doing, and you always say, I'm just kind of staying out the way, right? And as a little boy, I just stayed out the way. So I was just kind of like, I didn't want to I didn't want to be in the way. I did not want to be a part of that life. And fortunately, I can't ever really recall a moment where I was peer pressured into doing something, terribly bad.
It was so insightful at the end when you were talking about David, your brother David, how you said that you used to think he was kind of mean to you in the sense of, no, get out. I don't, your punk little brother, dragging me down, coming with my friends. And you thought about it after you lost him, and you thought, really, maybe he was really trying to keep you safe and just stay back.
Yeah.
I thought that was a very wise
Again, like I
observation.
said, when I was writing and thinking, going through that process, it allowed me to reflect and to think about, why was my mom getting high all the time? Why did my brothers treat me this way? Why was I anxious about the things that I was anxious about at the time? And then I realized that, even though my brother was up to no good, and he was in a way, he was just saving my life. And at that time, I didn't look at it that way,
Right.
Because he could have handed me, a pack of drugs, and I could have sat, on a corner with him and dealt and got, and went to jail, but he always pushed me away. So, rest his soul, he's no longer with us, but he was protecting me.
I want to talk about Work to Ride a little bit. So in order for you and the other participants in Work to Ride to be able to be there, you had to muck the stalls and groom the horses and exercise them, and that's what earns you the privilege of being taught to ride and being able to play polo. So you competed against people who had, $250,000 polo ponies, as you described, and I think all of us, when your description of walking in with broken boots and duct tapes on them and things that are too big, you had to roll your brother's,
Stirrups.
There you go, stirrups down and whatnot. It was very poignant. But do you think, in a way, Kareem, that you guys had an advantage of some kind over the other teams because you had to work so much harder for the privilege of being there? No one gave you a $250,000 horse that you handed off to a groomer to brush down afterwards. So maybe that gave you an advantage?
Yeah, I mean, we were hungry, and we wanted, we wanted to prove ourselves and also wanted to show that we belong, right? And, and to be very frank, we were just sick and tired of losing all the time, too. I think you just get tired of losing. But certainly, I just think about, the time, my brother Damar and Jabbar, my brothers Damar and Jabbar, we would sit in the living room and we would watch old VHS tapes of games and rewind them back and forth and study the players and, and talk about how one day we're going to have these horses and we're going to do this and have our family farm. And when we would travel to games, we would still talk about these things. And that was motivation for us, right? So it was, we wanted to win because everyone enjoyed, just as competitors, everyone wants to win. But, we knew we also wanted to show people that we belong, and we wanted to achieve everything that we talked about in the living room.
I want to talk about hope for a minute because I do think that's what your book is about. Early on in playing polo, you guys were seated in last place, as you just said. There were a lot of losing games there you wrote about. But you said, and I want to read this because these are your words and I thought they were powerful. You always went into the game thinking you had a shot. You said, I thought like I always thought. Maybe because I was a fool or maybe because I just wanted it so much. Maybe today will be different. Maybe today we won't lose. That's a lot of hope for a little skinny kid. Where did that hope come from?
I mean, I don't know if it's innate or if, as I talked about before, when you come from limited resources or basically nothing, sometimes that's all you have, right? And, it didn't cost me anything to believe or have hope, right? That was free. But it also gave me the drive to go do things that some people would say are, say it's unimaginable and, you're crazy. And even today, I still have an incredibly, optimistic view on life, and I think things will always work out for us, but we just got to believe it. And, it's one of the things that wakes me up every day, because I think, regardless of, what the situation may be at the time and family struggling, that we're going to be okay, because I could wake up and make every excuse and ask people to feel, bad and sorry for me, but that's not going to change anything. So, it's just a part of me, fortunately, that I'm able to just believe and have that hope, and I think it kind of worked out a bit.
Oh, I think it worked out just fine. But Kareem, the reason I asked you where you think you got that hope from is because we all bring our own life experiences. When we read a book, when you read, it's like you see the movie in your mind. I saw your whole life. I mean, it was just like there for me. And I asked you about where you got that hope because I'd like to suggest that you patterned your hope from your mom. Because when I think about your mom, she was a victim of domestic abuse, but she still sought out love. That's hope. She made minimum wage, but she still worked. Hope. She was a drug addict, but she kept seeking recovery. The ultimate in hope. So some might call her a victim, but I really think of her as a champion. You're a champion. So I'm going to give a shout out to your mom and say, I think she was a real inspiration for hope, and you might have gotten it right from your sweet mom.
I agree with you, and I do want to congratulate her. She's now, I think, last couple of months she's 3 years sober now, so that's
great.
That's really.
I do obviously a lot of research before you interview someone, and I read an article where you said you called your mom 5 times a day. First of all, I would like to say on behalf of every mother in this room and every mother watching on TV and around the world, you are a great son.
Thank you. Well, if I didn't call her, she would be calling me, and it would just be, so. But that's just the love we have for each other, and, she's just being a mom.
No one's ever going to love you like your mama loves you.
No.
I tell my children that all the time. So by your sophomore year of high school, you and your Work to Ride team were so good, you were competing at collegiate levels. We're talking Cornell and Yale and UVA. I mean, just really top notch. And you were doing this as you were riding borrowed horses from your competitors and duct taped boots and the things we talked about. So I don't know anything about polo, really. You kind of taught me polo through your book, but paint a picture for us. So you go to this Ivy League school, your high school kids, and borrowed stuff, and you go to this Ivy League school where they have it all. Are people so in love with the game that they cheered for you guys? The spectators, were they cheering for you, or were they saying, who the heck are these guys, and why are they beating our team? Kind of tell us what that was about.
Yeah, so there are 2 different polos. You have arena polo and you have grass polo, and so in high school and college we play inside the arena, and when you travel to places you often rode the host horses, and just quickly, there are 2 strings of horses. A string is 6 horses, so it's 12 horses in an arena match, and each team rides that horse once. So there's no advantage as for someone who's hosting the game. But we don't have an arena at our place in Philly, and we also had an outdoor arena and had limited horses, so we were always on borrowed horses. And we would travel to these places, and the best thing for us, at least one of the advantages that I thought we had, was because we rode so many horses that we were pretty much able to ride anything. And people often refer to a bad polo pony or a bad horse as a donkey, right? So it's kind of slow horse, bad, and you don't want to ride a donkey in a polo match. It's not going to be helpful.
Take your word for it.
Yeah. And so, when we would travel to these places, we would always get on, horses that were foreign to us, and we didn't know anything about it, but we had a couple minutes to figure it out. And then, and then we would just go play. We never made an excuse that we were on a bad horse or, a team was unfair. And we go to places, like Cornell and Yale and UVA, and when we got to a level in high school where we were just, I guess, to be honest, just too good to play some of the high school teams, so we competed against the college teams.
That must have felt great.
Yeah, because we were now finally winning, so it was nice. That was like, it's kind of like a high-class problem. Oh, you got to go play the big boys now, So, but we love that competition, and we love the challenge, and then we started beating some of these guys, and I think people started to recognize us, and people were familiar with us, so we weren't just kind of like, who are these guys? People were like, work to rides coming into town, and to kind of hear that, and especially as like a 16, 17-year-old boy, you puff your chest out, you're happy, you're going, we're going to go play, but we never really thought about, how people felt about us, and or people laughing or making fun of us in the background. We're just happy to be away from where we grew up. Right. We're happy, that we're being exposed to, something that, many kids in our community would never be exposed to. And we were just excited to be on the horses and playing. So we didn't really care much about, what other folks were saying in the background.
I don't know really anything about polo, so when I think of polo, I don't know if, I know we have some polo fans here because I saw some of your questions, which I'm going to get to. So there are some people here who really know the game. But when I think of polo, in my mind, I imagine like it's played by people named Chaz and, Buffy and Hamilton. And I imagine the conversations are like, I'm submarine in the Hamptons and, that kind of thing. In my mind, that's what it seems like. So that might be entirely wrong. But I kind of think it's not wrong. But what I really want, this is probably my question I want the answer to the most. Something that struck me in your book, and I thought about this a lot, is never, ever once did I find a passage or an inference where you wrote about race as a barrier for success. Not one. You would talk about our horses weren't trained, or we couldn't practice 6 months of the year because you can't, practice. We didn't have an indoor arena. But never once did you tie anything to race. And I'm wondering if I have that right, and I'm wondering if your brothers and teammates felt that way, and if the kids currently in the Work to Ride program feel the way you do, or if that's just your amazing optimism again you got from your mom.
No, I mean, it was very clear wherever we went, it was just us. It was obvious. We could walk into a room, walk into an arena. There's no one else.
No one that looked like you.
There was no one that looked like me. And I was digressive. I was golfing with a guy the other day, and I told him I play polo, and he's like, oh, I just did this work with this guy who played polo, and I'm like, oh, what's his name? Trying to fix it. Oh, I can't remember his name, and he said, I'm like, is he black? He's like, yeah. I was like, of course I know who he is. So he's like. So I'm like, yeah, there's only a few of us, so we're trying to figure out who this guy is, and so long story short, so we figured it out. But we would go into these places, and it was clear we were different, we looked different, we talked differently, we dressed differently. For a very long time, the conversations we would have with folks, were uncomfortable just because we just came from different places. But we never, at least I personally have never experienced, where I went to a place where I felt unwelcomed, or someone was racist, or fortunately, I personally have never experienced that. And I think one thing that also helped us was our talent, right? Our talent kind of allowed us to stand out. And people, if they did judge us, it was never because we were black and we came from where we came from, but it was, oh, they're a good polo player or they're a bad polo player. And fortunately, we were decent polo players. So, I think most kids in the program really never kind of thought about race as an excuse, or trying to find excuses on why the other team is better, and say because they were white and they came from wherever they came from and that's why they're better than us. We didn't create excuses. We just worked hard and went out and won a national championship.
Having said all that, I mean, come on. What you've done is pretty darn amazing. I mean, you and the other kids in the Work to Ride programs. And it's amazing you didn't have much to work with. And grit and determination and belief and hope and drive, you're the national champions. It could be worse.
It could be worse, yeah. No, it was an incredible year. I think back in 2011 when we won the first one, and we would always get so close. I think probably, my sophomore, junior year in high school, we were always so close, but we could never close the door. And we were just so determined that last year. It was my final year in high school, my final chance to do it. And I remember begging Brandon and Damar and just asking them just to give me everything that you got, because this is our shot, this is our chance. And and we talked about winning all the time. And again, go back and think about hope and believing. I think half of the battle is like believing in yourself, right? Believe that you can actually go do these things. And all the kind of sort of self-affirmation, we were always just so positive and believing in each other, and I think just because we believed it happened.
It's beautiful. I'm going to ask a couple of polo questions. I didn't even know you could have a handicap in polo. Well, I know now.
Yes.
They set me straight. Okay. So a couple of polo questions. What do you think about the cloning of polo ponies, the pluses and minuses?
Yes, that's a great question. I mean, it's unfortunate for the folks who can't afford the cloning, but I think, just the way how the sport is structured, and there's no gambling or anything on polo. I think a lot of folks who don't know about polo, it's really all about your horses, right? So, you get to a point to where you're, as a player, skilled enough to learn how to hit the ball and stay on top of the horse, but then it comes down to your horse flesh. I think it's, me personally, I never really thought about it, but I think it's a cool thing. I had a chance to go to Argentina and go to one of the cloning labs and learn a bit about it. And I think the science behind it is fascinating. And also, the one player who's had been very successful at it, Adolfo Cambiaso, who's the best player in the world, to be able to go and take, take your best horse and replicate it 100 times and then play 10 of them in the best tournament in the world and win every award, it's kind of cool. It's kind of, so.
What is your handicap?
So,
and could you put that in perspective? Because just a number is not going to mean anything probably to most of us.
Yeah, so in golf, the lower your handicap, the better you are. So my golf handicap is very high. But in polo, the higher your handicap, the better you are. So there's I guess the handicap started at -1 all the way to 10, and your handicap is called a goal. So you have a -1. So there are only, I don't know, probably like maybe 8, 10 goalers in the world, and they all happen to be Argentinian. My handicap now, so you have 2 handicaps. You have an arena handicap and a grass handicap, and my arena handicap is 4, and my 4, and then my grass handicap is 2. And so, every polo player goal is to kind of get to that 10 goal handicap, but there's a handful of them in the world, and that requires, a lot of training, a lot of resources. So yeah.
There you have it. Golf and polo. I'm curious about something. One of my favorite parts of any memoirs at the very back, and you did not disappoint, where you really get an insight to who the author thanks and who they acknowledge, because you want those, to really understand what the relationships and how they formed the author's, writing. And there was one name that I found noticeably absent I wanted to ask you about, besides my own, of course, even though we just met today. Steve Bannerman. Mr. Bannerman was, of course, the man that provided the scholarship for Kareem at Valley Forge. And you thanked a lot of people, but you didn't mention him, and you're smiling, and I'm a mom, so I know that smile. So could you just tell me a little bit about that?
So I did thank him back there. His name is not Steve.
Oh, okay.
So I did thank him. And
that's why when I Googled him, I couldn't find him.
I know. Yeah, his name is not Steve. And, you know, I'm sure those who I get that question a lot about, do I even still talk to him? What's my relationship like with him? Unfortunately, he and I don't talk anymore. You know, I think, you know, I just had to kind of end our relationship because he continued to try to kind of dictate my life and my career and what I wanted to do, and he never seemed satisfied with what I was doing, which is still incredibly confusing to me, but that's okay.
He hasn't learned the lesson that when you give a gift, you give it with no strings attached.
Yeah.
That's it. When you think about going home, you know how when I think about going home, I go home to Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm a small town. I'm always going to be a small town girl from Indiana. So when you think about going home, is that going home to your mom's house? In the bottom is going home to the barn at Work to Ride.
I mean, Work to Ride is my home away from home all the time. But you know, going home is definitely going to the bottom. I don't spend much time I don't spend any time in the bottom at all, actually. Fortunately, you know, I'm back in Philly, and you know, I'm just a few minutes away from the bottom. But you know, I'll never forget where I came from and where I grew up. Unfortunately, you know, majority of my family, they're all still there, and you know, I think as I said in that piece, you know, it's always going to be a part of me. It's always going to follow me. But I love Philly. I love it despite all of the violence and the kind of crazy things that are going on there now. I still think it's an incredible city, and it's home, right? My family's there, and as long as they're there, it's always going to be a part of me.
Of course. Let's discuss on behalf of all the women in the audience, let's discuss your modeling career. In 2019, you and your brother headlined a 2019 campaign for Ralph Lauren, and you said the reaction was incredible. I'm just curious about how the deal came about, and when you said the reaction is incredible, what does that mean?
Yeah, no, so, you know, they reached out to us, you know, I think back in 19, and it was originally they wanted to do just a piece or something, an article, and then I guess, you know, some folks internally there were like, no, we need to do more than just a piece, and they asked if we would want to participate in campaigns, and we're like, sure, why not? You know, we don't mind a few extra bucks. So, you know, that kind of relationship turned into much more than we originally anticipated. You know, my brother and I were never out to become models. It just kind of sort of fell in our lap. And you know, kind of working with a company like Ralph Lauren, so that caliber, and that comes with a lot of, you know, incredible perks and people reaching out. And but the best thing about that relationship was, again, when I think about doing these things, and like such as modeling and writing a book and going around talking, it's like it's also tying it back to the organization, to Work to Ride. And you know, they were gracious enough to support and write a meaningful check to help Work to Ride. And you know, so I was so happy that we were able to go out and, you know, do something that obviously personally benefited us, but more importantly, helped the charity.
Of course. Well, I just checked my watch, and we have a few more questions to get to, but they said that I needed to wrap it up at a certain time, and as much as I love librarians, they also scare me. When a librarian tells you to do something, you do it. So I'm going to end in a few moments here, but I have some questions. You're a new dad.
Yes.
You have a daughter, a little 8-month-old daughter. Yay. Have you put her, when I say put her on a horse, I don't mean actually put, I mean, have you held her and gotten on a horse, taken her to the barn so she can see the horses?
Yeah, I did that for the first time a couple weeks ago, and it was the best feeling ever.
Of course.
It was the best feeling ever, and I don't think I smiled that hard in a long time. But yes, I do have a little girl. Her name is Zara. You know, she is the best thing to me right now. You know, like I said, I'm actually now enjoying being a dad. Now she's 8 months. She's a little more active, and she's crawling to me, and she's smiling. She's not just sleeping, pooping, and throwing up on me anymore. So it's,
she'll still do that for a while.
She'll still do it for a while, but it's nice now. Now I can enjoy the, you know, her personality's coming out.
Totally.
But you know, my dad was absent in my life. You know, my mom, you know, raised 6 of us by herself. And, you know, she, you know, even, you know, despite all of her struggles and things, she showed us how to be a parent, you know, and to be present and to be there for our children. You know, Zara is actually one of 10 grandkids right now. So, yeah, my brothers and sisters got busy, really. So, but my mom, she loves it. And, you know, it gives her purpose. And I know it's just the best feeling. We talk about it, you know, at least twice out of our 5 times we talk a day. So, you know,
great, yeah.
But yeah, it's great. I've been loving fatherhood.
That's wonderful. Congratulations. So I don't know if you, I don't know if you have shared this with the audience yet or not, but there are plans to turn your book into a movie.
Yes.
Yes, I know, right? Yay, right? So we want the scoop, okay? We want the scoop on the movie, and I'd like to know who you would like to play you.
I get that question all the time. So yes, my book has been optioned, which I'm incredibly excited about. You know, it's a big company out here in LA, and we are in the process of looking for screenwriters and other partners to attach to the project. So that process is happening. In terms of who's playing me, I think it's going to be a couple versions of myself, because there will be a younger Kareem and an older Kareem, or at least a 8-year-old and probably a teenage version of myself. And I don't know any 8-year-old actors right now, so I don't know who that would be. And then my teenage self, I don't know, really, honestly. You know, as I've been going through this process, I've been learning a little bit more about Hollywood and, you know, writing, producing, and financing a film, and just understanding the process, which is really neat, because I just enjoy learning new things all the time. But I'm excited about the film because, you know, I know this is something a lot of folks have been wanting for a really long time, and you know, every time someone reads the book, they always say, this is going to make an incredible movie. And so let's hope it makes an incredible movie.
That's wonderful. Tell us about your next book, because you're working on, you're working on 2 books, I read, and so I'd like to know about the next one.
Well, I am thinking about a second book. I'm actually in the process of kind of developing that now and thinking through that. But I'm going to kind of just hold off on sharing any of the details. But I am thinking about a second book.
Okay. You have a very sly smile. You're like, how did she find that out? Okay. You'll be back.
Yeah.
I'll have you answer that question. My final question, before we wrap things up for now, before you sign, books, one of the most touching, beautiful parts of the book, because I'm the youngest of 5, so I totally relate to having those siblings that you love so much and you're close to. You know, when you're all together, you're huddled together, and you're talking, and David and Bea and, you know, are talking about you guys having a family farm.
Yes.
And what that's going to be like. And then at other, your mom talking about she still has that hope, and she'd like to live in the country in a little house so she can have a garden.
Yes.
Which ties into the family farm. And I so desperately want you and your siblings and your mom to have that family farm so much.
Thank you.
And I'd like for you to just kind of share with us, how that plan is progressing and when you think that might be a reality.
Yeah, we still talk about it. It's, I'm, just going to continue to work incredibly hard. You know, my brother Damar is working in Boston now as a marketing coordinator. My brother Jabbar is now trying to get a new job, and my sister Kareema is raising 4 kids and also working very hard. So I think now we're all kind of well into our careers and you know, providing for our families. You know, it's something that we definitely want to do, and I think when the time is right, I think my mom probably wants a few more grandkids too, and I don't know about that. But you know, I think the plan is still coming along, and I believe one day that we will have that.
I believe it too.
You know, and it's one of those things that, you know, again, being hopeful about it and believing it and kind of speaking it into existence. You know, but it's happening. You know, and I think as we are all kind of growing our families and settling in, I think one day we'll certainly find a piece of land where all the grandkids can run around and play, and my mom can, you know, do what she wants to do, and we'll hopefully have horses running around and all the other crazy animals that we love.
That's wonderful. I want to thank you, Kareem, for coming here today, for answering all of our questions and just sharing your life and your experiences with us. It's been a joy. I think I know a little bit more now, as we all do, about polo, even though I really think what you're about is perseverance and hope.
Thank you.
It's been such a pleasure. So I just have a couple of notes, if I can, to everyone. Thank you to everyone for coming today. Thank you for everyone watching on TOTV and on the City of Thousand Oaks YouTube channel. How cool is that? I'm gonna have to check that out. I didn't even know that. Once again, a special thank you to the Friends of the Thousand Oaks Library for sponsoring this program. You guys are very generous. Thank you for doing that. For those of you who would like to purchase a copy of Kareem's book, the Friends of the Thousand Oaks Library have copies of Crossing the Line on sale in the lobby. And Kareem will be in the lobby after this to sign your books, which I know will be a treasured part of your collection, as it already is on mine. As a quick reminder, in compliance with the Ventura County Public Health Order, masks or face coverings, although not required, are recommended for all persons regardless of vaccination status. And I just want to thank you all for coming. I'm honored to have been here. Happy National Library Week, and let's give Kareem a very warm round of applause.
Thank you.